Vanessa Rossi is a Senior Research Fellow in Economics and Policy Consultants at Chatham House, and you can read Vanessa's full analysis on Ireland exclusively on Bloomberg.com. Vanessa, thank you so much for coming in.
Good to see you.
It's difficult to understand whether actually a lot of these countries need to access the bailout or really whether they're pushed by the markets, because we're seeing these widening spreads. How much of an impact are the markets having?
Well, the markets are certainly putting the pressure on the banks, and this is why Ireland has a particularly large problem. For Portugal and Greece, the difficulties are more their inability to generate growth, their long-standing budget deficits and debt, and you need to mop it up. But in a sense, it's a known quantity. With Ireland, the problem is that not only has the economy hit the skids, but that the banks are so large that when they need a bailout, this becomes impossible for the Irish economy. So what we're actually seeing at the moment is a managed policy of how much aid to give Ireland. It has to be enough to be meaningful, but it can't be too big, or else this is not going to be seen as viable debt. It's immediately going to be seen as a fig leaf for what effectively is a bank bailout. Now, the difficulty we see with this problem is that for the moment that may mop it up. We're trying to convince markets that that's enough. We've solved the bank problem. But come the new year, if the banks are still seeing problems, for example, they've had difficulties raising money in the market, they've had to access more and more ECB money. If this continues and turns into a flood in the new year, what happens for Bailout 2? That's my real worry, and I think that's what's really frightening some people in the markets. And this is not the bond vigilantes, this is the banking sector itself.
But Vanessa, this bailout too would come exactly from where? Would it be a second wave of money coming from the ECB and the IMF? Do bailouts work as they stand through this fund?
Well, the difficulty with this one is that it would be quite clear that it's all to do with rescuing the banks, and it would be way too much money for Ireland to be able to take on in public sector debt. We've already seen the problems with this bailout and the fiscal package shown. It's not clear that Ireland will be able to grow its economy very easily to ever pay back this debt. So bailout 2 would have to be a much more serious affair. Is this going to be the ECB pumping a lot of money into Ireland's banks to rescue them? Is it going to be some kind of EU-structured close down of the Irish banks, effectively some kind of forced marriage or closing of these banks? What will happen? Or, miraculously, can they actually restore confidence by the measures they've taken? I think this is absolutely on a knife edge at the moment.
And Vanessa, the other problem, of course, is contagion to other countries. We spoke yesterday exclusively to the Deputy Finance Minister of Spain, saying, well, Spain doesn't have any funding problems, but we have heard it before. Are you concerned that actually more countries will have to tap into the bailout in the coming months?
Well, I think certainly in terms of the fiscal package bailouts, it's clear that Portugal's heading that way. The opposition parties have started to spill the beans about various problems with the Portuguese debt and so forth. It looks likely they'll get some small handouts. That will be fine. But the bigger problem is, will this banking market problem roll on? And if it does, then the money could be pulled out of some of the other European banking sectors as well, and that would escalate the whole problem way beyond any kind of assistance packages that have been discussed so far in Brussels.